State your name and town.
Francis Fleeson, Oakland.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I am here in favor of this curriculum. Equality and inclusion are vital to the education of our children. I understand that many oppose this because they think it is critical race theory, which it is not. Critical race theory is a college graduate level theory course that has nothing to do with high school K through 12. It is absurd to think that our children will be reading constitutional law. It is a common misconception that people believe as truth now. CRT was conceived in the 1960s during the civil rights movement. It is not an ideology, it is a theory only. Our children seek only to learn about the true history of our nation, not about things that have been whitewashed that we've been told over the years. Case in point, the Pledge of Allegiance never included under God until 1954, when then Senator McCarthy introduced a bill crusading for it because he wanted to prove that we were a Christian nation. Before that, it was just one nation, indivisible. My friends, we are not teaching college level theory to our children. We are not forcing any ideologies. We are here because we want to teach our children true history of the United States and to appreciate who we are and include everyone, regardless of race, gender identity, sexual orientation, or whatever. We are all one people. We are all one human race. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Kim Anch from Franklin Lakes. First, I'd like to say congratulations and welcome to our new superintendent, Dr. Dionisio. We're happy to have you. And Mrs. LaForgia, you should be extremely proud of the wonderful young man that you've raised. He was terrific tonight. Governor Murphy issued Executive Order 251, which says that the schools must maintain a policy regarding mandatory use of face masks. He also listed 8 exceptions. Why is the masking already being enforced in our schools when there is no Board of Ed policy to govern this, and the executive order states there should be a policy? Why is the administration omitting the exceptions to the mask requirements when telling parents and students that they must mask? Why are they also not allowing anyone to use any of the exceptions, even extreme heat? At the end of this past school year, the governor issued the exact same exceptions, and Mr. Rashika used that exception of extreme heat in order to make the masks optional. So why in the world, when it's now summer and it's going to be 90 degrees this week, are we not allowing the same thing? For exception A of the first reading of policy 1648.01, when doing so would inhibit the individual's health, such as when the individual is exposed to extreme heat indoors, temperature of 80 degrees is too hot. Does anyone here keep their house at 80? I know I don't. Where it says an individual can demonstrate an inhibition for their health by supplying a letter from a licensed physician or psychologist. First, the word health needs to be defined as including both physical and mental health. Second, a much longer list of doctors and specialists needs to be added. Third, you also need to add parents to that list like they did in Middletown. Since we know our children best, we know about their physical health, how much worse their allergies are, their constant headaches, and they feel lethargic and can't think as clearly when they're masked all day. We also know about their anxiety. We know that when our child gets terrible acne, or maskne, as the kids call it, that not only affects their physical health, but their mental health. They're worried about how they look and how awful they feel about themselves. And to echo Mr. Fortunato's statement earlier, it's hard enough being a teenager, especially after the past year and a half. Why do we need to pile more on top of them? Parents are also the ones they cry to at night when they're so anxious about trying to breathe all day with a mask on, how they can't concentrate in their classes or while taking a test, how they can't see anyone's expressions all day, and just how hard it is to meet and make new friends with all of their faces covered up. The mental abuse that is being inflicted on our children is both unnecessary and criminal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dana Lustig, 23 Lehigh Way, Oakland. I am the parent of a sophomore and I have another child who graduated in 19. Neither of my children have ever had a non-white teacher. I do not have a diverse background, and they grew up in a town with extremely low diversity. These are just a few of the reasons I support the recently enacted requirements that schools, quote, examine the impact that unconscious bias and economic disparities have on both an individual level and society as a whole. This legislation states that each school district shall incorporate instruction on economic diversity, equity, inclusion, tolerance, and belonging in connection with gender and sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, disabilities, and religious tolerance. Schools shall include age-appropriate lessons that examine the effects of unconscious bias. Sorry, I'm on my phone and I didn't print it out. 1 second. The language is clear. Shall, not may, but shall. I'm listening to you snore while I'm talking, and it's very disrespectful. How do we expect
Can you please let the
How do we
person
expect
speak?
our children and your students to respect each other when you don't respect each other and our audience doesn't respect each other? Our parents don't respect one another and you do not respect one another. Hearing morons telling each other to shut up, laughing at each other, is this who we are? My second concern is the removal of all but one diverse author from the English 2 honors curriculum. Why were books such as Dear Martin, a book about an African-American man that was murdered over loud music, and The 57 Bus, a book about a person who was lit on fire for their being a minority citizen, removed? There were several other optional readings with diverse authors that were also removed. The fundamentals of school board members makes note that you as board members are responsible for the curriculum. The questions I have are, were you aware of this removal? Was it intentional? Why weren't other diverse authors chosen as replacement novels? Who was consulted regarding diversity and inclusion of the curriculum? What training have the board members and the people who wrote the curriculum had in diversity and inclusion? And does this change represent the core values and mission of our school district? Is this representative of the oath you took as leaders? If the resistance to inclusion and diversity curriculum was in response, I would like to know whether
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rebecca Rund, and I'm from Franklin Lakes. Never did I think that in 2021, I would be standing in an auditorium discussing or frankly debating the value of DEI in our curriculum. It makes me sad and it makes me angry, and I feel like someone has dropped me back in a time machine by about 70 years. Our schools do more than teach facts and information. One of the jobs of our schools is to develop informed, critical thinkers. One cannot be a critical thinker without the ability to look at the world and the issues we face through various lenses, not just our own lenses and not just from the perspective of our own individual experiences. This does not mean that we teach our kids exactly which perspective to follow, but it does mean helping our kids understand that their experiences and perspectives are one of many. It's our jobs to better understand the experience and perspectives of others, even when we don't agree. I'm 49 years old, soon to be 50, and after years of education and work, I can tell you that some of the classes that impacted my critical thinking the most happened when I was young. Back then it wasn't called DEI. I was just lucky enough to grow up in a school system in Baltimore, Maryland, where this was just part of how our teachers taught. I think of my 11th grade teacher, Miss Joan Fowler, who introduced me to Southern authors, in particular Black female authors. I think of my 12th grade civics class with Mr. Paul Bolenbaugh, where we learned how to ask and debate difficult issues facing society and how to not agree in a respectful, thoughtful manner. I think of my class from my junior year of college with Professor Vitru, who taught a class on Vietnam and the media, where we learned that different news outlets cover the same issues from very different perspectives and can absolutely shape our opinions. And I think of my first year graduate course when I studied public policy, where Professor Fritz Mayer taught us, unfortunately, that all the facts in the world don't combat emotional decision making, which is something we see all the time, including tonight. My point here was not to walk you down memory lane for the sake of it. My point is that DEI is actually an asset and not a threat. And so much tonight that I've heard is based in fear. It's something to embrace, and it's something that helps our kids become critical, intelligent, and thoughtful decision makers. And to me, I don't see how that is a bad thing. Thank you.
Thank you.